Yeah.
All right, guys. This is episode 2 of the Brewed Awakening. We're doing this to kind of we made a Facebook post, or Keith made a Facebook post about it a little earlier in the week. We want to clarify a little bit some of the things that...
Or not clarify.
Yeah.
It's not butter. It's
some of the things that took place with our Headed Monster, and to have like video presentation where you guys can see and have us kind of reiterate on some things that we've talked to our distributors about, and Keith made a public Facebook post about. But I wanted to have you guys be able to have us sit here and talk about it in front of you. So Brian, if you kind of want to lead the way a little bit, we can sample it and go over the taste of each one of them, or we can go right into a little bit about the color.
Hey man, this is America. Let's go right into it. It's 2019 in America. This is full complacency. All right. So first and foremost, generally speaking, this isn't news to anybody. People taste with their eyes first. This is really obvious. There's a big difference between point A and point B. All right, seven-headed. First and foremost, I want to apologize. Not Keith's fault, brewing department's fault. This was our fault. Essentially, first and foremost, we left about 3 or 4 pounds of roasted malt in the auger line, which I promise you, on a grand scale, is not going to render it this color. But beyond that, and again, this was between me and Scott, we milled in the wrong base malt, which was a high color pale ale malt, as opposed to our 2-row. This is why it renders it a different color. As far as flavor component, does it render it any differently? Very little.
Well, and something that you and I talked about a little bit was that even though it looks different, we think that flavor wise, this is probably the best batch of 7-head that we've made up until this point. As far as what the taste is like.
It's up there. I mean, I understand that consistency is important and people are looking for consistency.
Yeah.
That is, I don't want to say a flawed logic as much as by that logic, you're saying that if you see where an improvement can be made,
right,
and you don't make that improvement, I that's where I find the flaw. Now, once you get to the point where you're like, hey man, this product is exactly where we want it, and at that juncture, should it change? Probably not. Like, a Bell's Too Hard to the World, would you ever change that?
No.
I sure hope not. But from day one, the 7-Headed Monster, we were dry hopping differently every time to experiment with what we had in-house. So has it ever really been consistent? From batch to batch, probably not. For most people, are they going to be able to tell the difference? Maybe, maybe not. But we're trying to get to that point where this becomes our Bell's Too Hearted.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it there yet? We're not comfortable with where it's at. Okay. So we are moving in that direction. Is this color rendition or change our fault? Absolutely. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
We use the wrong base malt. How much does it change the beer? Very, very little.
Flavor-wise, like a very indiscriminate amount. Like, you're not going to be able to...
A hint of more malt,
yeah,
and a hint of more caramel, I would say.
Yeah.
Outside of that, to be perfectly honest with you, this, I actually do enjoy this more.
I do too.
I think the hop notes on this guy right here is better. Yeah. I truly do. That's up for you to decide. It's not up for us to decide.
Right.
That's the consumer. So, in a nutshell, that is what happened. All that said, I'm not going to say every base malt's the same. They're absolutely not.
Still
but it's still a base malt, and base malts don't really...
We started talking for a little while. We need to...
I just been waiting like
a palate.
Let me get off the soapbox there, and I'll actually have a drink there.
All right.
Well, hey, let's go one right to the other. Let's let her roll.
Yeah. So this was the most recent batch of 7-headed that that malt base was put into, and then this was the second batch, correct? Of the.
This is pre this.
Right.
Those are comparable. They're very, very comparable.
I know you don't necessarily like that terminology for it, Brian, but like the more clear batch of the Seven-Headed, the previous batch prior to the darker one.
I wouldn't even necessarily say clear as much as just lighter color.
Right.
Like the haze is the same.
Right. You had kind of hinted at, and I know you don't like the terminology, but it's a little bit more leafy.
Yeah.
Right, and I get that. I get that verbiage. I understand that. Like this. Maybe a little bit of a negative connotation saying leafy, but like I definitely understand that verbiage.
Recent research has actually shown that a lot of people do enjoy leafy. I personally don't. I'm looking specifically for the essential oils.
Yeah.
I think with and I had alluded to earlier, we have tried different dry hopping processes on this. The recipe has never changed. It's always been the same.
Yeah.
It's just been how we've dry hopped it. So are we gonna test different pressures and temperatures and maybe using the hop back or going a more traditional route? Absolutely we are. And we're gonna mess around with it and we're gonna find what we think works best. We're specifically looking for the essential oils, not necessarily like a tannin leafiness. Cellulose out of the hops on the cold side, dry hops. But yeah, we're gonna continue to mess around with that, and I apologize for people that love the Seven-Headed the way it is, but I'd like to think that we're doing this to continue to only make better beer.
Correct.
Again, crazy concept, but like I'd like to think this is science.
Yeah, science the fuck out of it. And if I want to like pull back a little bit here, I feel like it's pretty.
Well, don't pull out completely. Right.
Jesus. Okay. I'd like to have Keith talk a little bit about why we chose to be as public about this as we could have been, and I've had this conversation with a few of our distributors across the state about where we all feel that in Seven Hills we think we can improve, and about that status quo of transparency with all of our products. So if you wanna delve into a little bit about what made us want to be as forthright about this as we could.
Me and Brian were just talking about it. We kind of walked right up to the line when I saw a bottle. I wasn't aware that what had happened, and I tried the product. I brought it over, wanted to be objective and kind of get out of the brewery, and just because I know me and Brian kind of had like a heightened emotional response because we knew it was different, and I know that our first reaction, and it's everybody's first reaction is to this is defense mode. Like, okay, well, how are we going to protect what's going on? So once we kind of stepped back and started saying like, well, what if people say something? Well, we started anticipating responses, and that's when I realized this could lead down a slope of stretching the truth, white lying, even though we weren't prepared to try to trick the public into anything. Obviously, it's pretty apparent. We also didn't want to try to sweep it under the rug. So we always say like, if we identify a problem, let's acknowledge it, let's own it, and let's fix it, let's manipulate it. And the best way we could do it is to we're still new in the brewery, so let's everybody tries to hide their flaws on Instagram and social media, so I'm like let's expose theirs, because we always in the office we always give each other shit constantly, so why do we care if the public gives a shit, And I anticipated we'd probably have a few initial shock responses, which we did. But for the most part, people who know us and follow us know that we're brutally honest.
Some of the feedback that we had gotten like basically off the bat from your Facebook post was that we really appreciate that transparency and that honesty, and that's something that I don't feel like a lot of breweries, I guess, really do, is be that transparent and that forthright about some of their flaws. And that I think that meant a lot to a lot of the people that at least viewed or interacted on that post.
Well, I think you can attest to the rise of the desire for superhero movies. In the world of lies and politics, misinformation, people want honesty and transparency deep down. I think we all do. So that was kind of the moment. Like, what would my favorite brewery do if how would they respond? And I would love to read something similar to that. So that's kind of what that empathic moment of thought was like. Let's just do it. And it was truthful. Like me and could easily been like the brewery screwed this up, but to say that for Brian to take full responsibility is not true. We've put a tremendous amount of stress and pressure on ourselves. And we've always valued that we worked really hard. We try not to cut any corners. Whether this was an instance where we did or not, I mean, I could see it being a moment where it was an oversight because we're constantly in movement and at fast speeds. And we just finally got to a point, which is the funny part, where we just started to slow down on in-house, production and stuff as we prep to outsource our bottling. And it's kind of one of those, irony of being like, hey, look, we actually made a small little error on our end.
Yep.
Me and Brian tasted the product, and we're very fiscally conservative, which I think business owners should be. But we're not misers and cheap either. If we had a beer that we thought was funky and there was something, we could go on a different discussion in the podcast.
Well, we would have recalled it instantly.
Yeah, we would have dumped it. We did it with a sour beer year one.
Yep.
Brian could delve more into that. I don't think it was under.
Before you get into that, if you don't mind, what he touched on a little bit is something that not a whole lot of people know about that we want to talk about a little bit, is that our Pilsner, our Red Ale, and our Seven-Headed Monster will be 4 bottles being produced at Back Pocket. That facility's in Coralville, correct? And what that's going to do essentially for us is that is going to allow our brewers to be more creative with some of our batches, and it's going to take less pressure off of them, or it's going to take more pressure off of them to be able to have that creative freedom and to kind of test the waters with what we want to do experimentally. So what he was saying about the sour, that we pulled that off.
Yeah, we did a huge batch.
I should reiterate, I should make mention of that sour that was dumped was not due to infection. It was lack of souring, which was lacto D or Del Bruchii. Didn't sour to the level that we wanted, so we dumped that. Yeah. And we went with a different lacto blend that soured the beer to the desired level.
And we won't call out any breweries because that's I should do. But a lot of breweries, if that would have happened, some of them would have sold that product.
And put it out.
And even if it wasn't a sour beer, they would call it a sour. I've seen breweries have infected beers and call them sours. And teach thy own. That's just not something we would do integrity-wise. And
I would say, if anything, it was a lack of infection.
Yeah, on the side, to be honest with you. Well, me and Brian basically came to that. We kind of walked to the edge of the cliff and said, "Do we push it? Do we dump it?" And me and him both, it's the way. Like, we get the way. Is the product bad? And we're like, no. Even though visually it's changed, the product is not bad. Yeah. So to throw down a quality beer down the drain because it has a suntan per se. It's like the ginger who has the sun too long. Do you still love it? You just push in the corner.
I often ask myself, what would Ron Swanson do? And he would not do that.
And that's where
good beer, you would never dump that down the drain. Dump that down the drain.
We've had I've bought some pretty bad swill passed off as craft beer in the past. So that's where I said, if I would have picked this case up on my own and drank out of it, I would have been like, wow, that's a different color. Still tastes really good.
Right.
I would have been like, I think you got my $10.99 worth or whatnot.
Four parts of tasting. First one's with the eyes.
It is.
That translates to everything that you're gonna ingest. So that's.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of what led to the post was we were all tiptoeing around like in the anticipated fear of the response of what people might say. So I said, let's just get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Because we still have work to do, and living with the anxiety that was building up was not. We might have messed with the next batch of beer had we not just gone off our chest.
We didn't want to have that be a ongoing thing. It was like if we released a bad product, we would be honest about that bad product. If we released a faulty product, we would be honest about that faulty product. So to be able to say. So to be able to say and be honest with people and not white lie about it, hey, this is what happened and this is where it is at, and still be okay, everyone in the staff releasing it for consumption.
Yeah, that was the other issue. Staff was kind of confused and nobody was really leading them into the right direction because they were like, this looks like the double IPA.
It does.
It's like, but it's a 7. Me and Abby were at home, we were kind of giggled at the moment of irony slapping us that if it was the malt from the previous one, like we said, we were not exactly sure, but if it was the brutal truth.
Yeah,
and that's what we're like. Is it ironic that's called the brutal truth? And then we're posing this question: do we, be honest about it?
So for the people, I guess that didn't know about that beer, that was our Russian Imperial that we did, and the name of it was The Brutal Truth, and the name of this podcast is the Brewed Awakening. You know, we want to stay true to that theme of just transparency and brutal truth.
I also like to think that translates across the board. So if we make just a home run beer and you want to know how we do it, we are not going to we're going to let you know the entire way, all the way through. And I don't necessarily mean that like, hey, we're going to like post it on Facebook, but if you're an inspiring home brewer or an inspiring professional brewer and you're like, hey man, I really like what you did with this, like come talk to us. We will tell you like step by step what we did in the interest of making better beer for everybody. Yeah. Like that's the idea.
Yep. Yeah, Do you have anything else you want to cover about the Seven-Headed, or I guess if you want to talk about things we have coming up, I guess that is kind of up to you too.
I got one more thing. The Monin and Gronin is gonna change color, and
it will.
And it turns out this is actually on purpose. We're lightening it up. We're taking.
Cheers to that.
All right, take this one.
I got. You sir. Team player.
Yep.
Cheers.
So the Monin Gronin is going to change.
All right. So some beers are going to subtly change. For the most part, no. A couple of them, the Imperial Smoke Stout, that is absolutely coming back. That is a dynamite beer. It was phenomenal. It is no longer an Imperial. We're driving it down from 9 to closer to 7.
It's the
just trying to make it a little bit more, stashes.
Yep.
We're going to drive down to make it a little bit more sessionable. Not that we don't love a good Imperial, but as far as like a flagship, that's a little high for a flagship. But we're just going to drive down and we'll do those seasonal stouts that are high ABV, high gravity. We're going to do those seasonally.
What was something that you talked about earlier today is basically for any of our flagships, we want people to be able to sit down and order more than one of them and be able to enjoy it.
Yeah, sessionable, responsible drinking. That's what I always preach. I promise you.
He doesn't preach often.
Load.
Take 2 of these and call me in the morning. I can only have 1 ginger beer and 1 stout. You ain't calling anybody.
All that said, the Monin and Gronin, that was one of the few beers.
Can we get Uber to endorse this podcast?
Yeah. I'm just so glad they're in Dubuque now.
Yeah, right.
Another one, Monin and Gronin. All right, so gang.
What did you change on this one?
Okay, so this is a work in progress. There's version 1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and we're progressively we switched up the bacteria in the kettle sour, and I'm really liking the package we're going with. It's souring it more, and then we're also supplementing citric acid in. And when I say citric acid, I mean fresh squeezed lemon juice, also fresh zested lemon. So they're one and the same. We fresh zest the lemon. We fresh squeeze the lemon. We supplement that in. About 5% of lemon juice is about citric acid. So we're trying to get the right parts per million in there, and we're going to sour it the right way. And then we're also going to pull some of the caramel malt out and put in a little bit of dextrin malt to sweeten it up. And the idea is to really try to create lemon head, essentially, like candy it a little bit. Lactose would be an option, but I'm really trying to go more traditional route on this.
We're still toying with it a little bit, right?
We're definitely toying with it. This is one of the very few flagship beers that when I came in, I was like, hey man, like a lot of these are great. They're awesome. Maybe a little tweaking here and there. But this was the one beer I'm like, this. I kind of want to overhaul this beer.
I don't like sours, so when it first came out, I was like, I can drink this beer. It's not that sour.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, I want this thing to be a freaking lemon bomb. And I was like, good, because when it gets there, I probably won't drink it.
Right.
And now it's halfway there. And I took some of it. This is really good. I don't want it.
It's still going to be friendly.
Really good.
It's still going to be beginner sour, and then our seasonal sours, and I'd like to do a couple a year. Those are going to be sour bombs.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
This is still going to be friendly, but I don't want tart. I want it to be a sour.
Yeah. If any unlikely, maybe, possibly, but like if any of our distributors are listening to this, that's something that I've been very honest with. About that sour is that like, hey, we weren't happy with the first couple renditions of it, and it's going to change, and we want to improve on it. And I feel like that is the basis for all of our beers. Is that like our first rendition of anything, we want to improve on it, and we want to improve even on some of our flagships. You can take the 700 for example. Some of the things you were talking about with that. There's always room for improvement in anything that we're doing.
It's evolution.
Yeah.
So at risk of getting long-winded, one thing I took away from Seawell is when you make an adjustment to a recipe, the adjustment should be, I want to say the adjustment should be about 5% and never more than that.
Yeah.
So that it's not perceivable by the customer. Okay, that's perfect for a macro brewery. We are not a macro brewery. By that logic, changing a recipe to get it to where you want would take years. Okay, I don't want to wait years to get a recipe to where we want it.
We're not patient.
Okay. so we're going to change more than one variable at a time, or but I promise you, like, we are using science. Like, okay, I'm not going to change this variable and this variable because they're too closely linked. I'm only going to change two variables at the same time if you can absolutely distinguish between the two to taste. Well,
at the risk of being long-winded, we'll cut this pretty short. Some of the things we've got coming out in January, we have the Lemony Wings coming out. I've had a lot of people just asking when are we coming back out with that. We're able to say end of January. February we have a pecan nut brown, double chocolate stout coming out, and
in February with those releases we're going to do a beer and food pairing in the brew pub on Valentine's Day, and on the same day we'll do a speed dating event across the other side of the brew pub.
Ooh.
Since we're not a romantic place to go, we're one-off Valentine's Day.
Yeah. And I don't know if I feel like delving into what we've got coming up. I think I want to hold that. I want to play that tight to my chest for now.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. Keep them on the edge of their seat, if you will.
Right. Just right up to there and don't let them.
I don't like your hand signals. I don't like it. But thank you guys for those that stay listening during this whole BS session and letting us get this all off our chest. And Brewed Awakening #3 coming soon.
Truth and beer.